Now we're going to find the actual time for these checkpoints. In the previous video, we set these checkpoints to show their time, and we just set a value of time. But the important thing was, we got this time from a different script. We got it from a game main, which holds all the information we want about the game. So our game main, I clicked on it and then clicked the diagram. It holds these variables for the time, but we just hard set them to numbers that will show up every time. And now we want to actually fill these in correctly with the time since the game started. So to do that, we could do that in update, and I'm going to need update anyway, so I'm going to add a base event, update. And I could set all that logic up here, but that's going to kind of get messy because calculating this is it gets a little bit messy and we have to do some math. So what I'm going to do to clean this up is I'm going to start showing you how to create your own function. And to create your own function, functions can be used, they're like boxes. You can give them information and they spit out other information. And I'm going to make a function here that does just that. So I'm going to click on this and create a function. And this function is going to be called calculate time, or format time, actually is a better format time function. And I don't necessarily need to do this, but I want to show you how a function works. I'm going to say the input data that comes in is a float, and this is going to be the time in seconds since the game started. Now you could have 1,000 seconds. It doesn't format it into minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. You could have 5,000 seconds. It just counts the amount of seconds that you're going to have. So I'm going to call this time in, and this is what's going to come into this function. And I want it to spit out, I'm not going to care about hours right now. I want it to spit out 3 ints. Int, and I want this to be minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. And I'm going to create this function. And you can see that I have a new function that I made here. Now I'm going to have to call this because this isn't a Unity event. I'm going to have to call this myself. But in this function here, I'm going to have to do the logic between these two things and fill out these things that this will spit out. I'll be passing time in and filling out what these actually are. These will not fill out the variables yet. I spelled minutes wrong. I have to live with that right now. I'll fix it later. So we can do the calculations. So time in for minutes, this is the amount of time, seconds that has passed since the game has come, and I'll show you that. If I call this function right here, in update, and I have to call it in update because update runs all the time. If I right click and go to functions now, right above variables, now that I made a function, you can see that that's there. And the function I want is format time. This format time function is going to get called here, but I have to pass something into it. And what I want to pass in is time. I'm just going to type in time. And time is a category that has a bunch of things here, but the one I want is time get. And if I right click on time get and go to documentation, I can go the time at the beginning of this frame. This is the time in seconds since the start of the game. That's kind of what I want. Time in seconds since start of the game. I'm going to pass that into here. And it's going to do a bunch of calculations, and it's going to spit out what I want to set these things to. So I want to set minutes, or myantes, whatever I spelled that with, minutes to minutes, seconds to seconds, and milliseconds to milliseconds. And I'll set all those in this. Well, I can just set them now, how this is going to work out. And drag that to there. So update's going to get called. It's going to pass in time to this function that I made. And this function is going to fill out all of the actual variables here. Now I could do this all right in here, but I want to show you how to get a function to work correctly. This is a little bit overkill on this. So this green time in here is actually coming from here. This little tab here becomes this function that runs the logic, and these are what spit out to here. the returns come out. So let's format the time. Time coming in. The amount of seconds, if I want it to go to minutes, is just going to be a multiply. And it's okay if you don't understand all the math here. I'm going to use some modulus and stuff, which I don't want to go over, but time in, the seconds, I don't want times. I want divide. So divide, I just hit the divide sign, and I want to divide by 60. That is going to give me all of the seconds that have come here, and it's going to convert them into minutes. And I can't put a float into an int there, so I actually have to convert this float to an int, to int. Float to int. And I'm going to come off the seconds again, and to go to seconds, I need something called mod, modulus float. And I want to mod this by 60, and this is going to be to int. Don't worry about the math for mod. You can look it up, or we can go over it some other time. And then the last thing for milliseconds, I need to get these seconds, and I need to multiply them by 1,000. And then I need to mod that also by 1,000. And to int that. So now that I have this function called, I need to remember this has an execute. This will not run unless I bring the logic across. If you see the white triangle mark execute kind of node there, I must hook that up. If I don't hook that up, the logic doesn't run. And I'm getting the time that's passed in, time in, comes in here, does all these calculations, then spits out the actual answers I want, and then back in update, I fill in the variables as needed for that. So now, since I've already set this up in my checkpoint, on start, I'm getting the actual version, the behavior of this game main, the one I found in here. And then in on trigger enter, I'm activating that time, and I'm getting these values that I just set up from this behavior here. Now it says prefab game main here because I needed that to set it up, but when the game starts, it will find the correct one and populate it correctly. Let's see. So 2 seconds, 2.5, 4.3, 5.6. Now you'll see something else here. I should not be able to go back and hit this again. As I'm hitting this again, that's getting called and always updating the time. I don't want that to happen. I want the actual, I want it to stay, whatever it was, because we're going to add all these up at the end to get your total time. So we need to put some protection in for that. And we're going to do it in the checkpoint. So on the checkpoint prefab, I'm going to make something called a Boolean to make sure that we can only do this once. So bool's the first one that comes up, and I'm going to go CP checked. Checkpoint checked. Create. And at first, it's false. The checkpoint has not been checked. So this red bool says it's false. And before this can do anything, before it's going to hit the trigger, but I'm going to check to see, have you been checked yet? So I can grab this variable that I have here, CP checked, and off of it I want an if statement. If, in execution flow, if, and instead of coming right to this, I'm going to come to the if statement. If, on trigger enter, if checkpoint is false, that means I haven't hit it yet. So if it's false, it means I haven't hit it yet. And what I'm going to do at the end here, I could probably do it anywhere, but I'll do it at the end. I'm going to set this variable that I'm checking, and to do this, I'm going to assign bool, and the value I want to assign it is true, and hook it up. So now, when I hit the thing, I'm going to say, are you false? Because you should be false if I didn't hit you. It's like, yes, I am false. Activate the timer, mesh, fill in the values for it, add them up, do that. And then it's going to set that to true. And then the next time I come to hit that again, it's going to say, on trigger enter, are you false? And it's going to say, no, I'm true. It's going to come up here and do nothing, which is what I want it to do. I want it to do nothing. So let's test that out. So now that's 2.369 seconds. And if I come back into it, it stays at 2.369 seconds. And that's 11 seconds. And that's 15 seconds. And now we're starting to get some logic in here that I can use to actually build a game with this. I can still hit these in any order, which is not what we want. I want to make it so I can only hit them in the correct order. And we'll be doing that next video. But the big takeaways from this video are we, in game main, use the prefab here, in game main, in the diagram, these can all go to 0 now because they're going to get filled in update of the game main. And I used a function to do this, just to clear this up and make the logic more organized. I used a function to do this to show you how to create a function. I created a function with an in. I did some logic in here, and then I returned all the things that I wanted and caught them outside of here. And then all the things with executions I had to hook up. So that's how we created a function. That's how we got the correct time for this. And then on our checkpoint, we just did some logic with an if check to make sure that we can only hit this once. Made a bool, made it false, said if you're false when you start, go ahead and set the time because we only want to do it once. And then once you're done with that, set that bool to true. So the next time you come in to hit this on trigger enter, doesn't do the thing. So we'll be doing some game main logic next time. Thanks for watching.